Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching GEEKCASTER. I'm Michael, and we have in our studio...
Ladies first.
Phoenix Sparks.
That's that way.
Yeah.
Samantha, Sam Eats Plants.
That's that way.
Dayveonne, Bussey.
That's that way.
Corey Davis.
Cool. And I'm Michael. Yeah, so we're going to talk about a whole bunch of things. We do sci-fi, fantasy, geek culture, and pop culture commentary. So, boom. We're going to do the pop culture commentary and talk about some things. All right, so I try to avoid the news sometimes, but sometimes you just get slapped with it.
Yeah.
We did talk about what we talked about off camera. The shootings and stuff like that.
Yes.
The subway shooting, but something else happened today.
Buffalo. Well, today was Texas.
So what happened in Texas today?
14 children and the person that was shooting 14 died and the shooter killed himself. And most of them were children.
The cop shot him. Ended the shooter's life.
Oh, the cop shot him. Okay.
Yes.
That's a big
Okay.
difference.
Sorry.
Wow. Now, that's crazy because the thing that just happened, what was it, last week?
Really? Was
Been about
it Friday? Was it?
Let's look it up.
in Buffalo.
In
Buffalo
Buffalo,
was
yeah.
probably I would say that's about 10 days ago.
10 days ago. Okay.
10 to 14 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So we have multiple major cities.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, yeah, that was May 14th. Wow.
10 days. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in a country where there's a large availability to guns and ammunition, as well as having a lot of deep-rooted trauma on both sides. I mean, people talk about slavery and slaves having trauma, but there's trauma on the other side as well. There's a lot of guilt.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hate. There's a lot of manipulating minds, especially those to fight each other. You know, if you got a bunch of people to focus on fighting each other, you can't look up and look at who's really, pulling the strings.
Right.
Is it realistic, or is it par for the course being in this country? Is it realistic that we can get all this to stop, or this is what it is? This is America. That's the conversation I would like to have with you guys in reference to that. What are you thinking?
I guess I'll start it off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think this is the new America with how much information we have out there. You're never going to consolidate it. So everyone has a way to announce either their biases, their racism, their discrepancies, whatever have you. I first think that the only way to combat this is to make sure everyone's mental health is as strong and sound as humanly possible, because we are fed so much outside influence. It's kind of hard to sift through the noise.
Mm-hmm.
And as we talk about impressionable minds, if we don't solidify their mental health first of all, then the bombardment of all these outside influences are just going to convolute their thoughts, and we're going to have more and more of these episodes as we have been seeing.
Well, there's a lot swarming around all of this. First is Um, I would like to put it in the caveat that a lot of these mass shootings are done with people who are using guns that were not registered to them. That being said, for those who decide that, not just decide, this country is always going to have multiple firearms per person in this country. There's far more firearms than there are people in this country. That's what it is. There's nothing going to change it. They're not going to round up guns. It's not going to happen. So if we understand at least that part, if they're not putting in more stipulations and measures to ensure that people have access only to guns they are legally allowed to purchase and to carry, then I really wonder how much do they care about these type of incidents that might happen. If we even just look at New York City, where it's usually like one-off shootings, almost no one is using a gun that's actually registered in their name. That's almost nobody. So that means people are acquiring illegal firearms somehow, some way. These things are trackable, especially because firearms all have numbers and registered like numbers on it. If they're falling into people's hands, including people who are just getting it from their dad or getting it, in grandma's chest, then that means we don't prioritize as a nation just the absolute responsibility that comes with the unusual privilege we have to even have firearms. So I think we need to talk about just personal responsibility and priorities as a nation, that if we understand, even the guy that went to the BLM protest and killed those 2 people, that was not his gun. And he illegally took it over state lines. I mean, we're talking about like multiple offenses. So that also being said, a lot of those types of individuals are going to do what they want, the way they want it. That means they need to actually feel a certain type of repercussion or feel that they're not invincible. And I don't even know if some of these people feel they're invincible. I think some of them, it is like a suicide mission, And maybe this is their way of like marking their name in infamy. I don't know, but I really do agree with you with the whole mental health thing. And one of my recent philosophies is every industry needs a psychiatrist and a philosopher. So people understand what they're doing and why. And if their job does things are a little bit, like if you're a cop or if you're a doctor and you deal with death a lot, just have someone there like a psychiatrist to deal with it, because the mental health aspect would be very helpful to have empathy for your fellow neighbors. That's a start.
I kind of want to push back on your notions, though.
Go ahead.
The first part being, we have established that people are getting these guns that are not registered to them. So the people who do purchase these firearms, they do have gun safes. They do the correct things, which is to not have your gun loaded in the house, have it in the safe, not have it easily accessible. But when you do have a household, and let's say, God forbid, someone tries to break into your house, you then have to run to your safe. You then have to open it. You then have to open 2 other boxes where your ammo is, where your gun is. You have to load it up, blah, 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 and defend your house. So we're talking about these responsible gun owners. They're doing the right things. They're seeing the correct psychiatrists, having the correct sound mental health. They're doing the appropriate things, which is letting their families know how to defend themselves with the weapon that it is in the house. So I say all this to say, why are we putting more stipulations on people who are doing it right when the people who are doing it wrong are the ones who are, as you say, trying to live themselves in infamy? How do we combat that?
Right.
Again, I don't think there's going to be a correct or easy answer, because if we sit here and make it harder for people to get guns, it's only going to feed the other market where illegal guns are sold. So not every firearm right now is sold with trackable numbers. There are things such as ghost guns where they actually raise the tracking numbers. So that's at-home gun kits where you can basically put a gun together yourself off the internet. There are a lot of other ways you can go through that are not the respectable channels. So how do we combat all of that? First, it has to be the individual. I think that's the only way we can combat all of these things that are happening at once.
And not only that, you gotta look at it this way, because you do have people that legally got the gun, but mentally they're not stable. And that's when you really have to look at the whole therapy aspect, because I really think they should enforce therapy or some type of psychological before, even if they have to purchase a gun. Because if you're not mentally sane, or if you mentally, but you're able to buy a gun, then that's a problem.
But this isn't the people who aren't shooting up the
Well,
schools
it's a
and movie
mixture,
theaters.
but
Baltimore. That was the
you-
legal gun. It was legal.
and also
Yeah.
the one that happened in Buffalo, that was a legal gun.
That's what I'm saying. All these guns are illegal, but what Samantha was saying, the people who are shooting up these places are not the legal registered owners of said guns. So how do you stop someone from taking someone else's gun and committing a heinous act? When people are going through the correct channels, are doing the correct things, are being responsible gun owners, they aren't going out, most of the time, aren't going out and creating these heinous acts. It's people who are getting illegal access to registered firearms from registered responsible gun owners. So how do you stop that from happening?
I mean, the news sources want to play the blame game and shift blame. Okay, look at the teachers, look at the parents, look at the gun owners, look at the whatever political affiliation. And I think at its base, it's a multifaceted issue with a lot of complexity and a lot of layers. And I think, yes, mental health plays a component, but also in our community, in our culture, I think glamorizing violence is definitely not helping the situation. I mean, in our music and our movies, it's so many scenes of guns and violence and killing, and our algorithms, our social media are very polarizing and help connect people who have really radical views with other people who also have very radical views, and that's super dangerous. So how do we find the fine line between protecting our freedoms and protecting the innocent?
Yeah.
It's interesting because there's so many things that are put into place that are, like, for instance, a seatbelt. That was on you if you wear a seatbelt. And now it's not. So there's a bunch of things that have become, well, we don't expect you to do the right thing, so you have to do this. So I think as a society, we're going to have to, like, at some point, make a decision. Are we going to have rules and regulations because, you know what, people are just going to do the wrong thing? You're a bunch of babies, so we have to get rid of everything? Or do we really focus as society on personal responsibility? I don't think we could keep jumping back and forth. And It's easy to say personal responsibility, but guess what? There's a bunch of people that aren't responsible. It's just not going to happen. Or can it happen?
That's the thing. It can happen. Can it happen here? I'm not sure. And the reason I say that is when I go to another country, just seeing how much, like, little basic rules they follow. I'll give you an example. I was in the airport in Portugal, and they have those lines, those aisles that turn and swivel, and you can pull up that little rope. Let's say there's nobody there, just to, like, go through or just go walk underneath it. So I had that opportunity. There was like 3 empty of those rows before people were there. So I was like, well, I'm not going to walk around this whole thing. I'm just going to go under. Let me tell you, the way they were like, what are you doing? Don't do that. Walk. And I'm like, oh, shoot. Yeah, they just follow the rules. They just do it. They're trained up to do it because there's an idea, subconscious, indirect, that the order of these things leads to order. So even though, yes, there isn't a problem if I just went under and did it, but it's a mindset that I have that if I decide I can cut a corner here, I can decide where I can cut corners elsewhere. I also noticed this. I went to a summer camp in France when I was a little girl, and it was always the American kids that did the BS, always. And specifically, now if you ever went to a sleepaway camp in the US, it's really common to like leave your cabin, go to your friend's cabin, like hee. That's normal like kid behavior. It's not normal kid behavior in France. It's not. So we did that. And it was such a big deal. They got the cops involved. They really worried someone was missing. And I remember thinking, why are they taking this so seriously? Clearly they're just at another friend's room. And it was such a big deal. And they had to talk to us late at night. They're like, why did you do this? And I'm trying to figure out why it's such a big deal. But that was my first lesson to realize, yo, we're wild. We just really have a culture of just doing what I want to do.
So with that point, with that culture, this is the reality.
Yeah.
Can we lie on the sword of personal responsibility, or do we get rid of all the guns? Do we get rid of all the ammunition? Like,
go ahead. Yeah.
I really have to say, you have to put the responsibility on the individual. Because at the end of the day, when you as a human being, you know right from wrong. If you decide to go wrong, then that's the choice you make.
Now, pause. You're in a different neighborhood. One of your kids is one of the kids that got shot. You still gonna say personal responsibility? If one of your family members was in that massacre, do you still... Again, I'm just asking the question. I'm not judging, but it's something that I think it's very interesting. I'm just posing questions, how people that like to go to the gun range or do this or do that, people that get affected and they lose someone in their family, they're in the opposite direction. Right. It's like...
I can't really say because, as an individual, I can't say I...
Would you feel different?
I probably would say yes. I definitely would feel different.
So an example, like this shooting that just happened on the subway yesterday morning. So if we go the personal responsibility route, I'm someone that's on the subways big time. I have a long commute on the subway, and it's been real crazy lately. And I'm here waiting, not on certain people just being punished for it, because they are punished for it. I'm waiting for policy citywide to be made to somehow figure out why these guns are getting into people's hands that have no business having it. So to me, I'm not even weighing on personal responsibility, because I know what personal responsibility is. It's the man that put feces in that woman's face. It's the other man that pushed that woman on the platform.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's still going to happen because these people exist. But sometimes, since we're going to be children, and I really think, like, out of this world, America's population, we are children who look for mommy and daddy to give us rules, right? That's how we decide to behave. So that's how we decide to be treated. So now I have to wait for policy to be made so that I can feel like I can get to work without something crazy happening to me.
Ironically enough, from what you just said, we're waiting for mommy and daddy to give us rules. A lot of that is because mommy and daddy didn't give us rules.
This is the weird dynamic of America.
Wait a minute, I gotta give myself some fire on that one. A little explosion on that one.
But I was about to go into the notion of that's the biggest issue with America. We have such an individualistic society where you could pretty much do what you want. And when we talk about people having the personal responsibility of not committing these heinous crimes, we also have the personal responsibility of protecting ourselves from people in these heinous crimes. So how do you mitigate that balance of you not wanting to own a firearm, but you also wanting to be safe?
Exactly.
That's community, though. That's policy. This is why we elect officials. Like, that's how you equalize it. And that means there's a failure to do so. No matter what, whenever there's illegal things in the hands of the general population, it's because there's an allowance for it. That means it's a failed policy. It's not just failed policy. They kind of want it to happen. It is not really difficult to ensure that acquired firearms in criminal activities are not then secretly sold to gangs. This is all connected. So
Right.
truly, real policy followed through responsibly by the people that we pay with our tax dollars, this can ensure it, because there are places that have less gun violence. There are places with less of this stuff. Go to Utah. They don't have anything happening. I mean, I'm being very general right now.
I was about to say there's
being very general right now. But there's things we can look at and ask why. Why is it like this here, but not like this here? And what are all the 100 million reasons why it's happening here than there? And decide to actually do some real mathematics, suss it all out, make equations, and implement. We don't want to. Whatever the reason, I don't know why we don't want to, but we don't want to.
Why do we need guns at all?
Well, this
it's not even about need, because why do we need heroin? Well, someone figured out how to do it and some people like it, right? To me, that's their prerogative.
No, but why do we want it? Obviously there are people that feel, I have a list that I think of, but I'm just curious if you guys heard from other individuals or yourself, why do you think people or yourselves need a gun? Because obviously people feel they need it.
I feel like
I have 3 good reasons off the bat.
Go ahead.
One,
what are they?
I live in a city. People break into houses and cars where I live. They do. 2, outside of the city, I know some people actually hunt for food to eat. That's easier to provide for them and their families. And 3, it's been here since the foundation of our country. So I think even if you don't like the presence of guns, it is one of those things that is just here to stay. And it's hard to undo.
I feel like that question is loaded in and of itself. Why do we need guns? It's like, why is there violence? It's never going to be answered. But to try to answer it, I want to kind of shift the attention away from the gun aspect, because when you do
there's a reason. Before you shift, hold that thought. The reason why I asked that, again, and I don't want us to run out of time, but usually violence is on the list, but not usually on the top of the list. It's usually, I want to protect my family. I want to protect my home, and which is legitimate. I'm saying it's not legitimate, but I'm asking the question because people watching this will be like, well, why do we need guns? And, another top answer besides protecting your family and your home is usually like, I live in a country where I don't know if I can trust the government. If things go crazy, and it's my right, and in the whole history of rebellion, and I should be able to protect myself in case I need to say, hey, things aren't going the way they want. Those are usually, at least what I've heard, the top reasons.
And
I think the easiest answer is yes, we are an individual society. We have the Constitution built into having guns. Second Amendment, everyone's pro-choice. I think the easiest answer is because we can. There's no other reason other than because we can and because I want to. I want to own a gun. I want to insert whatever reason. And that's pretty much it at the most basic.
Now, from the other side to that, right? The other thing is, well, if you have a knife, I have a sword. You have a sword, I have a gun. You have a gun that, boom, 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 I got one buckshot. Oh, you got the buckshot, I got a machine gun. You got a machine gun, now I got a missile. Where does it... Because there are cops still in this world that carry low-power guns or still sticks that'll beat you, and, it does exist. Is there any way that we could move backwards where it's not... Because why would I want a gun? Give me the machine gun. I don't want to miss.
Make bullets expensive.
Well, bullets are expensive. Ammo is very expensive, but that's not going to solve the issue. The other thing is, yes, there are caliber restrictions. So you can't... Some automatic rifles or some automatic weapons are illegal. Can you still get them for... like Phoenix was saying, for hunting or for nostalgic purposes? Yes, but they are already have their regulations and their stipulations to acquiring some of those weapons. How do you stop someone's intention from being a collector to one of heinous, you'll never be able to answer that question without looking at everyone's mental health. And I think that's what I was saying this whole time. We need to implore regulations that basically make sure not only as you as the proper gun owner that you are of sound mental health and mind to use said weapon, but also everyone in your household or your neighbors. So it's not just we're looking at it from one perspective. If we want to look at it nationwide, I think that's where we need to start.
I agree, but I also think it is very much a cultural thing. Look up the 10 states with the least gun violence, and you'll see Hawaii is in that list for number one, and 45% of the people there own guns. So I don't necessarily think it's ownership alone. I think we have to look at the big picture here, right? Because gun violence aside, people act so crazy now after the pandemic.
Now?
Even more.
Pandemic.
Even more crazy. Even more crazy. Dial it up a bit.
All right, so everyone's homework. Next week, we're doing another show. Make sure you buy a gun, bring it to the show. And no, I'm just kidding.
And I used to be kind of like against guns, and now I'm incredibly neutral. I want to know how to shoot them. I do also want a gun, and part of the reason for that shift is like all these shenanigans going on right here. These shenanigans, I'm like, this is crazy.
But that's the other side effect, right? Once you make guns more easily accessible, crimes are going to diminish because everyone's going to have a gun. Everyone's going to be able to defend themselves. So,
is that what happens? Crime diminishes with more guns? Are you sure?
Pretty much. You're talking about Utah, a state where it's actually very easy to get a gun. There's no,
I think that Phoenix and Sam brought up something super important. Yes, the whole mental health part of it, but culture. The culture in Utah versus the culture in Jersey, it's different. If you grew up around guns and you know that, no, guns kill, because see that deer we just killed last week? It ain't coming back to me. So you gotta watch what you're doing. Versus, I'm mad, I'm angry, here's a gun, you pushed me, it's an urban situation, boom, not putting that yes, you're angry, but if you kill someone, they're not coming back. And there are people connected to that death. It's not just this, it's not a video game.
Again,
correct.
If you look at areas where people use weapons to feed their families, such as Pennsylvania, a lot of those areas don't have that much gun violence outside of the city where people are using it for a specific purpose.
Well,
and one more, and then it's actually the end of this episode.
Just to reframe what you just said, to add in, you saying PA is having less crimes or gun violence, but there was an incident during the pandemic where there was two homeowners, and one just came over, and I guess the one ran in, got his gun and shot him and his wife.
That's different. That was actually, so I know which one you're talking about. They had a dispute for years, and because they had a really bad argument, and the husband and wife, as the neighbors have said, were picking on this guy, and he had a mental break because they were throwing all their his property. He went inside, grabbed one weapon, shot them both, went back inside, grabbed another weapon, shot them both, and then turned the gun on himself. So was that a mental break? Yes, I think we should have a mental check. So again, how do you stop someone from committing heinous crimes? You're not going to be able to. Even if you take their weapons away, when you're in that break, you will always find a way to do whatever it is your mind is telling you to do.
Well, we'll see if we do a part two, but this is ending right here. So leave comments. What do you think? Pros, cons, yes, no? This is the world we live in. Here we go.